Morning, St. Andrews. My name is Dana Ayoob, and I serve with our St. Andrews Leadership Institute. Now, you may or may not know this, but I recently moved down to Orange County from Los Angeles, where I had lived the last 3 years. And despite the short distance, this is a big transition, probably the best part of which is leaving the LA traffic behind. It is a new and amazing concept to me to be able to drive to a location and find parking upon arrival. So suddenly I found myself not needing to budget extra time for traffic or circling the block a few hundred times. And then especially considering the season we're in, I really don't have to budget any time for travel at all because I'm not really going anywhere anymore. So considering this extra time that I've had on my hands, I've been hoping to dive back into the Gospels, reading through the Gospels. And this week I landed on the Gospel of Mark. And I'm going slowly. I've only been reading through the first 2 chapters this week. And at the end of the second chapter, I noticed something about Mark so far. This one word kept coming up and it kind of lingered in my mind as I had finished my reading this morning. So I went back through and circled and counted how much this word came up in the book of Mark. And that word is immediately. It comes up 9 times within the first 2 chapters of Mark. Now, something hit me when I recognized that this morning, and it sent me back to this sense of urgency that I was so used to feeling. Immediately makes me feel like I'm in a rush, like I'm hurried, like I've only gotten a certain amount of time to get to where I need to be next. And it sends me in this spiral of wondering what I should be doing next, what I should be doing now, how I can manage my time to get all of the things I need done. And it's funny, even in this time where I have more space on my hands than I used to before, I'm so conditioned to that state of being that it creeps back in, and it has so often over the last few months because routine continues to be interrupted. For me, I'm sure for you, whether you're working from home or your kids are not in school anymore, our routine continues to get interrupted. And I find myself trying so hard to make sense of the chaos that I feel in my daily life and in the community surrounding me too. Trying really hard to reestablish a new routine constantly. The last story in Mark chapter 2 tells about Jesus and his disciples walking through a grain field, and his disciples are plucking heads of the grain. Now, this isn't something you or I probably have ever done in our lives, but essentially they are plucking grain to make food for themselves because they need food. Not a big deal, except that this took place on the Sabbath. Now, the Sabbath is a practice that exists to this day, but it was widely practiced in the whole community back in Jesus's time. This meant that the entire community would shut down for one day. They would interrupt their daily routine of working and take the entire day to rest. No grocery shopping, no filling up gas, no cooking even. They focused on resting this day so that they could recognize God's presence in their days and take a break from the routine of work. Now, a couple members of this community, the Pharisees, saw Jesus and his disciples plucking grain for their food and said to Jesus, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" Now, a day like the Sabbath back then, and to this day, if you practice it, takes a lot of hard work and preparation. Cooking everything ahead of time, planning everything out so that the entire community can remain shut down for a whole 24 hours. Can you imagine that to this day? So what it sounds like the Pharisees are saying to Jesus here, as I read this, it strikes me as them almost shaming Jesus and his disciples, saying, "Did you not prepare well enough for this day? And that sends me in another spiral. Have you ever felt unprepared or ashamed of not being prepared in the way others expected you to be? The Pharisees say this to Jesus, and his response to them in verse 27 is this: the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Jesus takes this concept that these Pharisees, this whole community, felt very strongly about, and he flips the whole thing around, essentially saying, you've missed the point. This interruption to our daily routine is a gift. It's intended to be a gift of rest, not something that you work hard for or that you work hard because of. It shouldn't be something that plagues you and causes you stress and anxiety, prevents you from getting the food that you need on this day. This interruption to our routine is a gift. I read that and I think back on all of the times immediately came up in these first 2 chapters. And often that word was referring to a certain behavior or reaction to something that Jesus had said or done. Immediately, the leprosy left him and he was made clean. Immediately, they left their nets and followed him. It strikes me that this sense of immediacy comes out of a compelling from Jesus. People are compelled to move from Christ's presence. And I think about my daily life right now and how the interruptions seem to keep coming up. And my tendency to try to make sense of the chaos, to work really hard to establish a new routine, might be missing the point. So I wonder what it could look like to look to Jesus's presence in the interruption and to be compelled to move out of that space, to receive the interruption as a gift and organize my behavior around that knowledge. So St. Andrews, today, will you look for the interruptions of your day and see if you can be curious about and acknowledge Christ's presence in those interruptions and the gift that he might have for you in them? Amen.